She was just a small-town waitress. But one hug for a lonely little girl would unravel a secret no one saw coming and change their lives forever. Rain kept falling outside the small diner, tapping softly on the windows as Emily wiped down the counter. It was late afternoon, and only a few customers sat scattered around, quietly eating or drinking coffee. Emily was tired but kept her warm smile on, the same one she wore every day, even when life felt heavy. She had been working at the diner for almost 4 years now, saving every dollar to help her younger sister finish college. Life was simple but not easy, and Emily had learned to find small bits of happiness in kind gestures and warm conversations. The bell above the diner door jingled softly, and Emily turned her head expecting another regular customer. But what she saw made her stop for a moment. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, stepped inside. Her hair was perfectly combed, her coat looked expensive, and shiny black shoes peeked out from under her dress. But her face looked lost, as if she didn't belong there. She stood just inside the doorway, unsure whether to come in or leave. Emily quickly walked over with her usual kindness. "Hey there, sweetheart. Are you waiting for someone?" she asked, gently. The girl nodded without saying a word. Emily smiled softly and led her to a booth near the window. "You can sit here till they come, okay? It's warmer inside." The girl slid into the booth, her little hands clutching a small handbag tightly. After a few minutes, Emily noticed the girl hadn't ordered anything. She walked over again and placed a cup of hot cocoa in front of her, topped with whipped cream. "This one's on the house," Emily said. The girl looked up, surprised. "You don't have to pay for it," Emily added with a wink. "You just look like you could use something warm." The girl gave a small smile and whispered, "Thank you." Her voice was soft and polite, but there was sadness behind it. Emily sat across from her for a moment, pretending to take a short break. "What's your name?" she asked. "Lily," the girl replied. "My dad said to wait for him here. He had to take a call." She looked toward the door again, her eyes full of hope and disappointment all at once. Emily nodded. "That's nice of him to bring you out. You're all dressed up, special day?" Lily shook her head slowly. "It was supposed to be. Daddy said we'd go to lunch together, but he's busy again." She stared at the cocoa and traced her finger along the cup. "He's always busy. He says he's doing important things, but sometimes I just want him to play with me." Emily felt her chest tighten. She saw loneliness in Lily's eyes, a kind she knew too well. She hesitated for a second before asking, "And what about your mom? She must miss you while you're out." Lily's eyes grew watery, and she whispered, "Mom's in heaven." And she quickly wiped her eyes with her small sleeve. The diner went quiet around them. Emily swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. "I'm so sorry, honey," she said softly. "I lost my mom too when I was little. I know how that feels." Lily looked up at her, surprised that someone understood. "Does it stop hurting?" she asked. Emily smiled sadly. "It doesn't go away completely, but you learn to remember the good things. The way she laughed, the things she used to say, it's like she stays with you in your heart." Lily nodded slowly, and for a few moments, neither of them spoke. The rain outside grew heavier, and thunder rolled in the distance. Then, out of nowhere, Lily's small body began to shake with quiet sobs. She tried to hide her face, but the tears came anyway. Without thinking, Emily slid beside her in the booth and wrapped her arms around the little girl. "Hey, it's okay," she whispered. "You can cry. Sometimes crying helps." Lily clung to her tightly, her tiny hands gripping Emily's apron, as if afraid to let go. Emily rubbed her back gently, letting her cry until she calmed down. She didn't care that other customers were watching. All she saw was a little girl who needed comfort. After a while, Lily took a shaky breath and said, "You hug like my mom used to." Emily felt tears prick her own eyes, but she smiled and said, "Then I'll give you one more for her." They sat like that for a few quiet moments until the sound of engines outside broke the calm. The door suddenly burst open, and a tall man in a suit rushed in, followed by 2 other men wearing earpieces. The whole diner turned to look. Emily quickly let go of Lily and stood up. The man's face was tense and worried, and then angry. "Lily," he said sharply. I told you to stay outside the car." Lily's eyes widened. "But Daddy," before she could finish, he turned to Emily. "Who are you? Why were you touching my daughter?" Emily froze. "Sir, she was alone and upset. I was just—" He raised a hand, cutting her off. The other customers began whispering. Emily realized who he was. Richard Hawthorne, the billionaire whose face was often in the news. He owned half the tech companies in the city. She suddenly felt small, standing there in her worn-out apron and coffee-stained shoes. Lily ran to her father, clutching his arm. "Daddy, don't be mad. She didn't do anything wrong. She was nice to me." Richard looked down at his daughter, his anger fading into confusion. He looked back at Emily, who stood quietly with her hands folded. She didn't look afraid or defensive, only concerned for the little girl. Richard took a deep breath. I'm sorry," he said stiffly. "I was just worried." Emily nodded. "I understand. You were scared for her." Lee tugged his sleeve. "She gave me cocoa, and she hugged me when I was sad." Richard looked at the cocoa cup, then at Emily again. "Thank you," he said, his voice quieter this time. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a $100 bill. "For your kindness." Emily shook her head and pushed his hand away. "No, thank you." She just needed someone to listen, not money. For a second, Richard didn't know what to say. No one had ever refused his money before. He stared at her as if trying to figure her out. Then he nodded slightly and placed his hand on Lily's shoulder. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go." Lily turned to Emily and smiled faintly. "Bye, Miss Emily." "Bye, Lily," Emily said softly. "Take care of yourself." The door closed behind them, and the diner slowly went back to its quiet rhythm. Emily stood still for a moment, staring at the empty booth where Lily had sat. The half-finished cup of cocoa was still there, a small reminder of a moment that had felt strangely special. She cleaned the table. But as she picked up the cup, she couldn't shake the feeling that something unusual had just happened. The warmth of that little hug still lingered around her like a secret she couldn't explain, out in the parking lot. Richard held his daughter's hand as they walked to their black car. "You really liked that waitress, huh?" he asked. Lily nodded. "She made me feel safe, Daddy. Like Mom used to." Richard looked out through the rain-smeared window before getting in. For the first time in a long while, he wondered if maybe his daughter had found something he'd lost. The simple kindness of a stranger who still believed in warmth over wealth. Inside the diner, Emily watched the car drive away, unaware that this small act of comfort would soon tie her life to theirs in ways she could never imagine. A week passed since the rainy afternoon when Emily met the little girl named Lily. Life at the diner went on as usual, but she often found herself thinking about that moment, the soft hug, the tears, and the innocent words. "You hug like my mom used to." Emily didn't know why the memory stayed with her, but it did. Every time she saw a little girl walk by with her parents, she thought of Lily and hoped she was doing fine. One bright morning, the diner was busy with the breakfast crowd. Emily was pouring coffee for a group of truck drivers when she heard the sound of expensive car tires screeching outside. She looked up, curious, but didn't think much of it. Then the bell above the door jingled, and a tall man in a dark suit stepped inside. The whole diner went quiet again, just like before. It was him, Richard Hawthorne, same man who had walked in that day with bodyguards. Everyone in town had heard of him. He was one of those people whose life seemed far away from ordinary folks, a billionaire who appeared on business magazines and news channels. The kind of man who didn't visit small-town diners. Emily froze for a second, wondering if he was here for her. But then she saw Lily walk in behind him, wearing a light pink dress and holding a stuffed rabbit in her hands. The girl's face lit up the moment she saw Emily. She broke into a run and wrapped her arms around her legs. "Miss Emily," Lily said happily. "Daddy brought me back." Emily bent down, smiling and surprised Lily. "I didn't think I'd see you again." Richard walked closer, his tone calmer this time. "Good morning." "I hope we're not interrupting." "Not at all," Emily replied politely. "You're always welcome here." They sat in the same booth where Lily had sat last time. The customers were whispering again, sneaking glances at the famous man who was suddenly in their small diner. But Emily didn't care about that. She focused on Lily, who was already telling her stories about her pet dog and how she had started piano lessons. Richard watched quietly at first, almost as if studying the scene. He was used to people treating him with either fear or fake respect, but Emily was different. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't trying to impress him. She spoke to him the same way she spoke to every customer, simple, kind, and honest. When Emily came back with their order, Lily giggled. "Daddy, you have to try Miss Emily's pancakes. They're the best ever." Richard smiled slightly, the first real smile she'd seen on him. "Is that so? Then I guess I'll have to trust the expert." They ate together, and for the first time in a long while, Lily laughed freely. Emily noticed how Richard watched his daughter, not like a busy man checking his phone, but like a father trying to remember what it meant to simply be with his child. After breakfast, when Lily went to the counter to pick out a lollipop, Richard spoke quietly to Emily. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "For the other day, Lily wouldn't stop talking about you. She said you were the first person who listened to her." Emily smiled softly. "She's a sweet girl. She just misses her mom." Richard's expression darkened for a moment, and he nodded. "Yes, her mother passed away 2 years ago. It's been difficult." Emily hesitated, but then said gently, "She talks about her often. You can tell she loved her very much." He looked down at his coffee, then said in a quiet voice, "So did I." There was silence between them for a moment. Emily could tell he wasn't a cold man, just one who'd forgotten how to show what he felt. "You're doing your best," she said finally. "That's what matters." Richard looked at her curiously. "You talk as if you've known us for years." She smiled. "Sometimes you don't need years to understand someone. You just have to listen." Something about that made Richard fall quiet again. He wasn't used to being spoken to like that, with sincerity, not fear. When it was time to leave, Lily insisted on hugging Emily again. "Can we come back next week, Daddy?" she asked eagerly. Richard hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "If Miss Emily doesn't mind, of course," Emily chuckled. "I'd love that." "You're both always welcome here," Lily beamed, and they left the diner. But before Richard stepped out, he turned back. "By the way," he said, "you refused my money last time. Not many people would do that." Emily shrugged lightly. "I wasn't being brave. It just didn't feel right to take it. Some things mean more than money." Richard nodded slowly, as if the words carried more weight than she realized. Then he left, his car gliding away into the busy street. Over the next few weeks, their visits became a quiet routine. Every Friday afternoon, the black car would pull up outside, and Lily would run inside with excitement. The other waitresses teased Emily, saying she had a rich admirer, but Emily always laughed it off. "He's just a father trying to make his daughter happy," she said. But something had changed inside Richard. He began to look forward to those diner visits more than his meetings or business dinners. He liked the smell of coffee and pancakes, the simple chatter of people who didn't care about stock prices or luxury brands. Most of all, he liked seeing Lily smile again, something she hadn't done much since her mother's death. Sometimes he would arrive before Lily finished her lessons. He and Emily would talk while waiting. He learned that Emily had grown up in the same town, lost her mother at a young age, and had been taking care of her younger sister ever since. Her father had left long ago, so she had learned to depend on herself. "You've been through a lot," Richard said one day, "yet you still smile." Emily looked at him and said, "Because smiling helps. Crying doesn't pay the bills." Richard laughed softly, the sound surprising even himself. "You remind me of someone I used to know." "Your wife?" Emily asked before she could stop herself. He nodded, his eyes distant. "Yes, she had the same kind of strength. She used to say that happiness is made, not found." Emily didn't know what to say, so she just smiled. "Sounds like she was a good person." "She was," he said quietly. When Lily arrived that day, she ran straight into her father's arms and then to Emily. They sat together again, and for the first time in years, Richard felt something warm spreading inside him, a sense of peace he hadn't known since losing his wife. When they left the diner that evening, Emily stood at the door watching them go. She didn't understand it yet, but something invisible was forming, a connection built not on money or fame, but on kindness and a little girl's need for love. Inside the car, Lily held her stuffed rabbit and smiled up at her father. "Daddy," she said softly, "Miss Emily makes you smile too." Richard looked at her, surprised, then chuckled. "Does she now?" Lily nodded seriously. "You laugh when she talks." "You didn't laugh before?" Didn't answer, but her words stayed with him. As they drove off into the evening light, Richard looked back once through the car window at the small diner fading behind them. It was an ordinary place, yet it had started to feel like the only spot in the world where something truly real still existed. And Emily, wiping down the counter as the sun set, felt it too. Something about that father and daughter had touched her in a way she couldn't explain. She had no idea how much deeper their stories were connected, or how one simple act of kindness would soon reveal truths. Neither of them could have imagined. It was a cool morning at the diner, and Emily was humming softly while she set up the tables for the day. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. She didn't expect anything unusual to happen. It was just another regular day. The last few weeks had been calm, though she often caught herself glancing at the door, half hoping Lily and her father might stop by again. Their last visit had been warm and full of laughter. And Emily had grown fond of the cheerful little girl who had once walked in crying just as she wiped the counter. The familiar sound of a car pulling up outside caught her attention. She looked out through the diner window and froze. A sleek black car parked in front, and she instantly recognized it. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw Lily hop out of the car with her stuffed rabbit in hand. Behind her, Richard followed, wearing a more relaxed look this time. No bodyguards, no tension. Just a father holding his daughter's hand. Lily ran inside, her bright voice filling the diner. "Miss Emily," she shouted with pure excitement. Everyone turned to look, but Emily laughed and opened her arms as Lily ran straight into them. "Hey, sweetheart," Emily said warmly. "I didn't know you were coming today. Daddy said it was a surprise." Lily giggled. "I told him I wanted to eat pancakes again." Emily smiled at Richard, who had just walked in. "Well, that's a wonderful surprise. You two made my morning better already." Richard nodded, smiling in return. "Lily couldn't stop talking about you. She insisted we come." Lily climbed into her favorite booth, and Emily brought her the usual pancakes with extra syrup and chocolate chips shaped like a heart. The girl's eyes lit up as she saw the plate. "You remembered," she said joyfully. "Of course I did," Emily said. "It's your favorite, isn't it?" Richard watched quietly, and for the first time he looked relaxed, not like the strict, busy man he had been before. His phone stayed in his pocket, and his eyes were focused only on his daughter. The sight made Emily smile. It was nice to see how Lily's laughter softened his face as Lily ate. Richard and Emily started to talk. Their conversations were simple, but natural. He asked her about her life, and she told him stories about the diner, the regulars, the funny customers, and how she and the cook sometimes played music while cleaning up after hours. Richard chuckled. "You make it sound like a happy little world." Emily shrugged. "It's not much, but it's honest. People come here when they need comfort, food, company, or just a friendly face." He nodded slowly. "I think I understand that now. I've spent years surrounded by people, yet I've never felt company. Everyone wants something from me. Money, favors, connections, but not kindness." Emily looked at him gently. "Maybe you were just looking in the wrong places." For a moment their eyes met, and there was quiet understanding between them. Lily suddenly interrupted, giggling. "Daddy, you're blushing." Richard laughed softly and shook his head. "No, I'm not." But he was. Even Emily could see a faint color rise on his cheeks. Later that afternoon, the diner became busier. Some customers whispered and stole glances at Richard, recognizing him from the news. Emily ignored the looks and focused on making sure her guests felt normal, not like they were being stared at. After everyone had finished eating, Richard asked Emily if he could help clean up the table. She laughed. "I can't let a billionaire wash dishes in my diner," he smiled. "Then maybe I'll just help by keeping you company." They talked a little longer. Richard told her about Lily's new school, how she had started smiling again, and even joined a music club. "I think meeting you changed her," he said thoughtfully. "She's been more open, more joyful." Emily smiled but shook her head. She just needed someone to remind her how loved she is. "You're doing that now." Richard looked down, his voice softer. "I didn't realize how far away I'd been from her. After my wife passed, I buried myself in work. It felt easier than feeling the pain. But I lost time with Lily, time I can't get back." Emily touched his hand gently, a gesture full of understanding. "You can't change the past, but you can still be there for her now. She doesn't need perfection, just you." Richard met her eyes again, and there was something genuine there, gratitude, maybe even admiration. He nodded slowly. "Thank you, Emily. You're right." Lily soon came running back with a drawing she had made on a napkin. "Look," she said proudly. "It's us, you, me, and Miss Emily, eating pancakes." The picture was messy and full of color. 3 smiling faces sitting at a diner table. Emily laughed softly as Richard took the napkin and looked at it with real emotion. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." When it was time to leave, Lily hugged Emily tightly as usual. "Can we come again next week?" she asked, looking up at her father. Richard smiled at her, then at Emily. "I think that can be arranged." After they left, Emily stood by the window, watching the car disappear down the road. Something inside her felt light. Not excitement, not romance, just a quiet happiness. She hadn't realized how much she had missed that feeling. Days turned into weeks, and their visits continued. Sometimes Richard came without Lily, just to grab a cup of coffee and talk. He told her about his work, his late wife, and how success had never filled the emptiness he felt inside. Emily listened without judgment, sharing small stories of her own about losing her mother, raising her sister, and learning to stay kind even when life got tough. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Richard said something that made Emily pause. "You know, I think Lily's not the only one who needed to meet you." Emily smiled softly, not sure how to respond. "Maybe we all need a little kindness sometimes." He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "Maybe so." That night, after the diner closed, Emily sat alone with a cup of coffee. The quiet hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the room. She thought about how strange life could be, how a small act of comfort on a rainy day had somehow brought a billionaire and his daughter into her simple world. She didn't know what it all meant yet. Maybe it was just friendship. Maybe it was fate. But one thing she did know, she cared about that little girl deeply. And she couldn't deny that whenever Richard smiled. Something inside her warmed too. As she turned off the lights and stepped outside, the cool air brushed against her skin. She looked up at the stars and whispered to herself, maybe good things do find their way back. Across town, in a mansion filled with quiet hallways, Lily was showing her napkin drawing to her father again. "Miss Emily makes everything feel like home," she said softly. Richard smiled and looked at the picture. "Yes," he murmured. "She really does." Neither of them knew how deeply that truth would soon shape their lives, that this simple friendship, born in a diner, would lead to discoveries that would change everything they thought they knew about the past. Weeks passed since Lily and her father had become frequent visitors to the small diner. Emily's days were still busy with serving breakfast and lunch to the regular customers, but there was a quiet excitement she felt whenever she looked toward the door, half expecting Lily's cheerful voice. She enjoyed the visits and the little moments of laughter that now seemed to fill the air whenever the girl was around. Life had a gentle rhythm, and for a while, it felt as though everything was just as it should be. But news travels fast in a small town. Soon, whispers began circulating about the waitress who had somehow charmed a billionaire and his daughter. Some of the regular customers stared at Emily a little differently, and a few even passed comments under their breath. "Did you see who was in here last week?" they'd say, nudging each other. A real millionaire. Emily tried to ignore it. She had no interest in fame or gossip. All she had done was show a little kindness to a sad child. Then, one afternoon, the diner became noticeably busier. A few unfamiliar faces had come in, looking around curiously. Emily sensed that something was off. She continued serving customers with her usual smile, but she couldn't shake the feeling of tension in the air. Soon enough, the bell above the door jingled, and a group of men with cameras and microphones stepped inside. Her heart sank instantly. Emily's mind raced. Reporters, of course. They had probably tracked Richard Hawthorne and were now looking for the mystery woman everyone had been talking about. She felt a rush of panic. Her apron felt heavy, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped down the counter. The crowd in the diner watched the scene unfold in silence. A few curious regulars whispered to each other, unsure of what was happening. Emily stepped back, trying to stay calm as the reporters began taking photos and asking questions. "Are you the woman who was seen with Richard Hawthorne?" one shouted. Emily's heart pounded. She had never wanted attention. She had only wanted to help a lonely little girl. The flash of the cameras made her close her eyes for a moment, wishing she could disappear. She ducked into the kitchen, hoping the reporters wouldn't follow her. Meanwhile, outside the diner, Richard had noticed the commotion from his car. He quickly walked in, leaving his phone behind for once. The moment he stepped through the door, the room seemed to go quiet again. His eyes searched for Emily, who was hiding behind the kitchen counter, and he gently guided the reporters away. "I apologize," he said quietly, addressing them. "She did nothing wrong. Please leave her alone." Emily peeked out from the kitchen. She was relieved, but her heart still raced. She had never experienced anything like this before. Richard walked over to her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry for the chaos," he said softly. "I never meant for any of this to happen." She shook her head, trying to smile. "It's not your fault. I'm not used to this kind of attention," he nodded, understanding. "I'll make sure it doesn't happen again." Just then, Lily, who had been standing quietly nearby, stepped forward. Her eyes were wide, but she looked determined. "Daddy, it's okay. She didn't do anything wrong. She's not like everyone else you meet." Richard looked at his daughter, surprised by her words. He felt a deep sense of pride, but also a strange unease. There was something about Emily that had already begun to affect both of them, a sense of calm, kindness, and honesty that he hadn't realized he was missing in his life. Lily suddenly turned to Emily and said something that stopped everyone in the room. "Miss Emily, she looks just like Mommy in the pictures you show me." Richard froze. The words hit him like a sudden gust of wind. He glanced at Emily, studying her face closely. Could it be possible? He shook his head, trying to clear the thought. Emily was a kind stranger who had helped his daughter, nothing more. Yet there was something about her, the gentle way she smiled, the softness in her eyes, that reminded him of his late wife. Emily felt her heart skip a beat. Though she didn't understand why. She had heard the comment, but she couldn't imagine what it meant. She had no connection to Richard's past that she knew of. And yet Lily's words carried an innocent truth that felt heavier than she could comprehend. The diner returned to a quiet hum after the reporters left, but the tension lingered. Richard sat down at a booth with Lily beside him, still looking thoughtfully at Emily. "There's something familiar about you," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Something I can't quite place." Emily blinked, unsure of what to say. I don't know what you mean," she murmured, her hands nervously clasped together. Lily, oblivious to the awkward tension, grabbed Emily's hand. "I think you remind him of Mommy because you make us happy," she said simply. Richard looked at his daughter, then back at Emily. He could see it in Lily's eyes, a reflection of the love and warmth he had lost years ago. That realization made him pause, and he felt a strange mix of hope and fear. Could it be possible that this woman, who had come into their lives so unexpectedly, had a connection to their past that he had never known? Over the next few days, Richard couldn't stop thinking about Emily's face. Every time he looked at old photos of his late wife, he saw the same gentle expression, the same kindness in the eyes. It was uncanny. He began to question everything: how life had brought Emily and Lily together, and why his daughter felt such comfort in her presence. Meanwhile, Emily tried to continue her life at the diner, but she felt the subtle shift around her. Customers whispered, and even some of the regulars seemed curious, as though they were waiting for something to happen. She was not used to being noticed, and it made her anxious. Yet, she couldn't ignore the feeling that something significant was about to be revealed. Richard decided to do some quiet investigation. Not out of suspicion, but out of a need to understand. He wanted to know why Lily had immediately connected with Emily in a way that no one else had. He started looking through old family photographs, old documents, and even letters from his wife's past. Something inside him told him that Emily's presence in their lives was more than coincidence. One evening, as Emily closed up the diner, she felt a strange sense of anticipation. She couldn't explain it, but she sensed that the visits from Richard and Lily were about to bring more than just friendship. Something important, something long hidden, was about to surface. And indeed, that truth would soon come out, shocking them both. It would explain why Lily had felt so connected to Emily, why Richard had felt a strange familiarity he couldn't place, and why a simple act of kindness in a small diner had opened the door to a family secret waiting to be discovered. As Emily cleaned the last plate and turned off the lights, she had no idea that her life and the lives of the billionaire and his daughter were about to change forever. Little did she know that Lily's innocent words had already set the stage for revelations that would alter everything they thought they knew about their past, their connections, and the power of simple human kindness. After the confusing and emotional day at the diner, Richard could not stop thinking about Emily. Her face, her warmth, and the gentle way she had comforted Lily had left an impression he couldn't shake. Every time he looked at old photographs of his late wife, he noticed something startling. Emily's expressions, her kind eyes, even the way she smiled seemed eerily familiar. He felt a strange pull, a feeling that their meeting was not just a random coincidence. Something in the past was quietly waiting to be uncovered, and he knew he had to find out what it was. The next morning, decided to search through old family records and letters his late wife had kept. He went through old photographs, diaries, and notes, hoping to find some clue that would explain why Lily felt so safe and happy around Emily. Hours passed, and just as he was about to give up, he noticed something unusual. In one old photograph taken decades ago, he saw a young woman, not much older than Emily, standing in the background of a family event. The resemblance was uncanny. Could it be possible? He continued digging and found out something that left him almost breathless. Emily's mother had once worked for the Hawthorne family, many years before Richard had even met his wife. She had been a nanny, a caretaker in their household, someone who had taken care of the children in the family. The resemblance between Emily and her late mother was so striking that it seemed as if history was repeating itself. Richard felt his heart racing. Could it be that the little girl's connection to Emily was not just because of kindness, but because their families had unknowingly been linked for years? He knew he had to talk to Emily, but he wanted to do it privately, without the noise of the diner or the curiosity of the town. Later that afternoon, he returned alone and asked to speak with her in a quiet corner. Emily, unaware of the discovery, smiled politely and asked how he was. But Richard's expression was serious, filled with a mix of wonder, relief, and nervousness. "Emily," he began softly, "there's something I need to tell you. Something about your past and about my family." Emily tilted her head, curious but cautious. She had no idea what he meant. Richard explained carefully, piece by piece. He told her about the old photographs, the letters, and the discovery that her mother had once been a part of the Hawthorne family's life. Emily listened, stunned. She had always known very little about her mother's past. Losing her mother when she was young had left many unanswered questions, and she had never imagined that her family's history would be connected to someone like Richard Hawthorne as he spoke. Emily felt tears prick at her eyes. The realization was overwhelming. Her mother, the woman she had always remembered with love and longing, had been part of a life so different from her own. And now, through a strange twist of fate, she had met the man who had been a part of her mother's past. It was as if the universe had carefully orchestrated this reunion. Richard looked at Emily with deep emotion. "I never imagined meeting you would reveal this connection. It feels surreal, and yet here you are, with Lily, bringing joy to her life, just like your mother once did for our family." Emily swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly. I I don't know what to say. I never knew. None of this. You don't have to say anything, Richard replied. I just wanted you to know the truth. You are part of this family's history in a way you never imagined. And now, you are helping create new happiness for Lily, something your mother would have been proud of. The room fell silent for a moment. Emily felt a mixture of awe, gratitude, and disbelief. Her life, which had seemed ordinary and simple, suddenly felt connected to something much bigger. She realized that her small acts of kindness, her warmth and care, were not just noticed by Lily, but it resonated through generations in ways she could never have guessed. Richard then made a surprising offer. I would like you to help with a foundation my wife and I were planning before she passed. A foundation to help children who are in need, who feel lost and alone. I can think of no one better than you to manage it. Emily blinked, overwhelmed. She had never imagined such an opportunity. She had worked hard to support her sister, to survive day by day, never thinking that her compassion could lead to something so meaningful. Yet here it was, a chance to honor her mother's memory and help children like Lily, giving them the same comfort and hope she had given to his daughter. I don't know what to say, Emily whispered. I would be honored, but I never expected. Richard smiled gently. No one expects life to bring them moments like this. Sometimes it finds a way to surprise us, and we just have to accept it. Lily, who had been quietly listening, ran over and hugged Emily tightly. See? I told you. You're meant to be with us, she said with her innocent certainty. Emily laughed softly through her tears. I guess so, Lily. I guess so. In the days that followed, their bond grew even stronger. Emily continued working at the diner, but now she also started helping Richard with the foundation. The three of them spent more time together, planning events, visiting children in need, and creating memories. Lily's laughter was brighter than ever, and she began to flourish under the love and attention from both her father and Emily. Once an unnoticed waitress found a new sense of purpose. She was not rich, but she was rich in a way that mattered more, in love, in connection, and in the knowledge that her small acts of kindness could change lives. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her mother's legacy of care and compassion was still alive through her actions. Richard, too, changed. The grief that had weighed heavily on his heart began to lift. He realized that wealth and power could never replace the simple joys of connection, love, and family. Through Emily, he found a renewed sense of purpose, not only as a father, but as a man who could honor the memory of his late wife by nurturing the happiness of a little girl who had lost so much. One evening, the three of them sat together in the diner, sharing pancakes and laughter. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow through the windows. It was a simple scene, ordinary in appearance, but extraordinary in meaning. Emily looked at Lily and Richard, feeling a deep sense of belonging she had never felt before. She realized that life had a strange but beautiful way of bringing people together. A small act of kindness, a hug on a rainy day, had led to this incredible moment, a moment where the past, present, future all seemed to connect perfectly. Lily looked up at Emily with wide eyes. You know, Miss Emily, I think Mommy would really like you. Emily's heart ached with love and remembrance. I hope so, Lily. I really hope so. Richard reached out and held Emily's hand gently. She would, he said softly. And so would I. As they sat there together, laughing and talking, Emily understood that life's most meaningful gifts were not wealth or fame, but love, kindness, and the bonds we create with others. What had started as a simple hug on a rainy afternoon had blossomed into a story of family connection and healing, a story that would continue to grow with every moment they shared. Emily had never imagined that her life, so ordinary and quiet, could intersect with a billionaire's family in such a profound way. Yet here she was, not only touching the life of a little girl who had been lonely and sad, but also discovering a deep connection to her own past, to her mother, and to the people who had shaped their family's story, in the warmth of the diner. Surrounded by laughter and love, Emily realized that kindness had a power greater than she had ever known. A simple act, given freely, had transformed lives and revealed a hidden truth that bound them together. And as the three of them looked at each other, sharing smiles and quiet joy, They knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, connection, and the kind of love that could never be measured by money or status. The diner, once just a place of work for Emily, had become a sanctuary, a place where family was found in unexpected ways, and where the past and present met to create a future brighter than any of them could have imagined. And as night fell outside, the warmth inside remained a testament to the power of kindness, the strength of family, and the enduring legacy of love.